Hey everyone, this is Louis7, and with the upcoming legendary item revamp in the Lord of the Rings Online, I want to share what I hope we get out of it, especially in the context of what has been announced and even what has been in some recent leaks. Basically, what I'm trying to do is keep the list as realistic as possible, and perhaps when the revamp comes to beta for public testing, I can use this list as a source of feedback to compare it to what would be about like an ideal new LI system to me. So with that, I am curious on your thoughts if you do want to comment that, but let's go ahead and get started with what I think is the most important thing, and that is that the new system really is a fresh start. And I know some people will likely initially disagree maybe with this idea, and even as shared by LOTRO's producer, this is something they have been mulling over. So from what I infer, there are some people on the development side who are in favor of doing a fresh start, and others want some sort of system where you can get use out of your old legendary items. And before I get into why I think there should be a fresh start, I do want to say that I totally understand people who have spent real money and on the LI system wanting to see at least some of that come back into the new system. It makes sense. And also from the development side, I'm pretty sure it would suck to think about how you're cutting people off like that if there's like no translation from the old system to the new system. But I really think to maximize the potential of the revamp, a fresh start is needed. And honestly, I would love a complete like scrap of the old system. And the fresh start doesn't just apply to the items themselves, but I also think this is actually important from a design philosophy. This revamp is a great opportunity to just work out like a brand new system independent of any functions of the old system. So in my mind, I think that is an important base for the whole system. And I do have one more note here on the fresh start, and while I would like a fresh start, perhaps an ideal implementation in my mind is some sort of system where you log in and you automatically actually get a base LI for whatever your character level is, and then to convert the relative power and work you put into your old LI, the game like automatically gives you some starter resources for the new system. And I think this compromise could be ideal because it allows for a fresh start as the old LIs are simply gone, and it still lets you get benefit from the old work and any expenditures you had on the old system. And with that ground rule aside and that cattail in my way, the next thing is probably obvious, but I think the new system needs to be simplified. In the alpha leak, there were details about legacies and relics, and both of them being basically the same thing with different names, and even within the legacies and relics, there were different types of each of those, and that honestly sounds kind of bad to me and not, it might be simplified, but it didn't sound too simplified. And if I were to start with a new system, I would have a single set of affixes, and it's honestly just more of a naming thing, but basically I would ideally say, just for example, say we have legacies. There could be, say, class legacies, stat legacies, and role legacies, and whatever other things they want to like go along with that. With these set of legacies, we have a single name and a single system within the LIs. And there is even enough variation within it to cover what were called all these different names with both legacies and relics in the Alpha League. And in this example, class legacies could, say, boost skills to match your spec or even be very general for the class. And stat legacies could simply like boost stats. Role legacies could improve a part of your role, such as AoE damage, damage over time, incoming healing, that type of more, say, specialized stuff that isn't specific to your class or what your character does as a class. And this does go along with what was in the Alpha Leak, but I think the important part summed up here is consistency and simplicity that should be heavily prioritized with the base design of LI progression. Another idea I'd actually have here is to just call them legendary traits. This would unify legendary items with the trait systems in LOTRO where other core character progression pieces are, we have like class traits, virtue traits, and even just racial traits actually. And I will say this does deviate a lot more compared to the Alpha Leak, but I thought it was still worth mentioning because hey, it is my hopes. But let's go ahead and move on to number 3 for me, and that is with progression, which will be a big section here. And to start this off, one of my biggest issues with LOTRO is actually character progression. and in particular pre-endgame progression, which the LI system does fall under, and especially the imbued LI system right now, starting at level 100 and going on through the full endgame experience. And one thing I do want to emphasize before this is that while I don't like pre-endgame grinds, I actually think endgame grind is a good thing, and I do not mind having to put in work at endgame to boost like my LI in certain ways. So, with that disclaimer out of the way, I think a big thing with the LI revamp is the base power of the legendary items just naturally progress with your character leveling up. One of the worst feelings I have with the current LI system is that if you don't grind certain content, or perhaps even worse, if you just like don't know about LI progression and that ramp there, especially with starlight crystals to boost damage, without that your character becomes very weak fairly quickly while leveling, especially starting kind of in the level 110 plus range, I've noticed. And after that, it just becomes worse and worse as your level continues to go up and up if you don't put in the necessary grinds to boost your LI, that again don't necessarily come with just leveling up or playing through the content even. So I of course would like to see smooth progression with level, and honestly with zero grind needed there. Now with the endgame content, I again don't mind a grind, but my biggest hope here is that you would be rewarded for just playing the game endgame content no matter what it is. Now, that statement does open a bit of a can of worms, because I personally believe endgame progression should be mostly tied to armor and not things like virtue traits, class traits, or importantly, legendary item power level. But this does not seem like a design philosophy that goes with Standing Stone games in LOTRO, so because I think the reality is they want LI to be a part of endgame progression, there are a few hopes I should still address out of that. And one thing I do want to make clear is that I think there is a lot of potential with a system like this, but based on my experience with other games, it is hard to execute a progression system outside of, say, just armor and making it exciting and feel like you're progressing your character while not feeling demotivating and too grindy. But to go ahead and just get to my hopes here. For number one, first of all, is all content can give you something for your LI, even if it is something like just anything that would give your character XP, also gives you some sort of legendary item XP, whatever form that is in. The second thing here is that there is not a huge power jump or anything extreme from a fresh LI, like if you just get to the level cap, compared to a maxed out LI. This is especially true for maybe something like special powers or whatever you'd want to describe that could be unlocked only in certain content or higher tier stuff, essentially unlocked in anything gated that aren't just a base part of the LI system. And while I get the idea of appeal of that for something to like look forward to, I don't think it makes sense from like a LI perspective, and I think it would be a better fit from like armor set bonuses or just specific item special affixes. But to me, from a base system like legendary items, it would make players feel bad for missing out on something like that rather than get excited to get it. Or at least that is how I would feel about it. Alright, the third thing here is catch-up mechanics. Whenever your character levels up to a new content era or whenever a new update is released, I think there should be some form of catch-up mechanics. I currently think endgame and LOTRO suffers a lot from lack of catch-up mechanics, especially for character progression and alts. So whatever format it is in, I think the new LI system needs to be easy to quickly catch up to some baseline level, as again either your character levels or like for the level cap if you're there, as new updates and content updates are released. So for example, what I mean here is basically, say with level 130 content with Minas Morgul, that is update 25, so there would be a new baseline power level for level 130 with update 26 Mists of Wilderland, and just as we keep going on with each major endgame content update, there would be a new baseline every update after that. And the whole idea here is that it is easier for you to be ready for the newest content in the game and join all the players that are in game right when you get there. And this would at least be one step for the LI aspect of that and getting ready there. But alright, so that is essentially what I hope out of the endgame progression with the system, and you may notice that I have at least tried to keep things broad and very general, because there are many, say, very specific things I guess you can add to the system, but still match those types of goals, so there's a lot of variety there. Not much point I think in covering it at this point. But yeah, I just personally hope for a design philosophy that simplifies progression, makes it easier to catch up and be ready for the latest in-game content in LOTRO, and something that smoothly scales with your character progression and leveling up towards endgame. And then while at endgame, there isn't a huge power jump between a freshly level capped character LI and maxed out LI. Now, this last point, I feel like I'm emphasizing it so much because this is something that has been super annoying about some of, say, World of Warcraft, because that is a game I have played a lot in the past. About some of WoW's previous systems that helped me lose interest in the game, especially when it came to what felt like core skills or rotations being highly dependent on specific items and builds that were only available as part of the expansion experience or whatever system flavor of the expansion type system they had. But I think this is a very, very important path to stay away from with this LI revamp. But we have talked about that enough now, and while the hopes I just went over were again pretty general, I do have some more specific things on my list. And first off here is that each legendary item type that your class has, for those you only get one LI that stays with you the entire game. So for example, for Warden it'd be like one-handed weapon and one javelin. And then for classes with different types of weapons, such as champions, guardians, wardens, and actually basically everything I think except maybe Runekeeper and Loremaster, I think the items with multiple possible weapon types should be player choice. My hope is this would be some sort of UI element or some Reforged type system where you identify the weapon type, as in you can choose one-handed hammer, one-handed sword, spear, or anything like that. For example, and I do have another idea here, but the point is it is player choice for which weapon type you want. Now, for the other idea, I first want to cover cosmetic LIs because it could tie into that, and my hope with cosmetics for the legendary items is that you could acquire cosmetic variants for your LI doing just different things in the game, much like how we have just tons of different legendary item models right now through just say different level ranges, different sources of the LIs, the different ages first, second, third, and things like that. There could be legendary cosmetics that give you different possible appearances for your LI. So that is the baseline there, but the way this would work in with the weapon type idea I have is if there's a new legendary cosmetic system as a whole. And I think this is a bit far-reaching, but it still is a hope of mine. And this hope is that there would be a UI element where you could just browse different weapon types and different cosmetic variants and just simply select which one you want to use with your LI based on what you have unlocked. Maybe it could be, for example, a bit similar to the collections panel in-game, but still a bit different and of course unique to LIs and their cosmetics. And I think this would be separate from like the cosmetic armor tab, and really I just think it could simplify changing how your weapon looks depending on what you want at any given time. If a system like this is how it actually worked, then they could also add some like special effects to LIs within this as well. But even if my grand like ideal cosmetic LI weapon system here doesn't come with the revamp, I think it would be fun to have special effects for LIs still. Basically, having a lot of player option and ease of choosing different cosmetics that you want for your LI is my overall hope here, I think, summed up. But there is one more topic I do want to cover, and that is going to be how crafting fits for LIs. And right now, I do honestly have to say crafting to me is quite boring and has been for quite a few updates. And this is true especially in regards to LIs, and with LIs, I will point out I don't like having the system of crafted relics like at all. And my hope here would be that crafting professions would be able to make LI related items, but very importantly, I don't think crafting should be necessary. I don't think having crafting be required is a good system, and just is another example of something that has soured my mood actually on progression in the game in the past. I think the LI revamp, among like many other things, is an opportunity to completely step away from a crafted relics type situation. But yeah, that is it with the crafting. Again, importantly, crafting should not be required, but still has some uses, can produce some beneficial LI boosting items as an option if you do want to utilize your crafting resources for that. But with that, I think that covers all the aspects of the LI system revamp and my hopes for it. Because the list overall was kind of short and I feel like simple things, I wanted to explain my thoughts and reasonings behind these hopes, especially with the context again of the alpha leak that I keep mentioning in all that on the new LI system and any details we have. So as a hope actually for this video, I hope that was useful to you all, and I do want to summarize it all here. So the biggest things with the new system is that it has a fresh start and it isn't impeded at all by our current system. And within this new system, there is a smooth progression curve with level, and base power is basically tied to your character level and content arrow within that level, along with new, say, content updates at the level cap smooth progression there. And then once you get to endgame, there are catch-up mechanics such that you are basically ready for the newest content in LOTRO's latest update without having to do any pre-endgame grinds or any prerequisites or anything like that, as we have in the current system with other systems that we have in LOTRO. Additionally, all content gives you some form of LI progression, and crafting can be used to craft LI-related items, but importantly, crafting is not necessary. Then as far as the progression itself goes, there's not a huge power gap from, say, starting endgame to being maxed out in context of LIs, and there are no special powers tied to specific content with LI progression, especially ones that significantly impact class performance or alter rotations or skills, or basically affect core class and spec gameplay. Again, that would ideally be in the form of like class traits, the system that is dedicated to that type of stuff. But that aside, in my hopes, you do only progress with one item for each LI type you have, and cosmetics are tied more into the new system and give you more freedom of choice with what you want for your character and your mood. And yeah, that is basically my ideal system in the form of hopes for the new system. But with that summary, that is all I have for you all for the video, and we'll of course see how things work with that when the beta comes sometime soon, hopefully. But with that, please do comment your thoughts with your hopes, because I am interested in what other players want to see out of the new system and if it does or doesn't align with what I think. And with that, I also do hope that you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing for more, or becoming a channel member to support the content, and thanks for watching, everyone.